Next end of year evaluation
Thank you so much.
and SLO conference, and he has chosen to use this time to give us a special presentation. So, let me close that for you.
Here's my note first.
Okay, I think that should help. There you go.
Okay, when I made the decision to resign in October, I didn't have any of this information, so this is me being very honest.
Okay.
I did this research after I made that decision. And the reason I made that decision was because in my inner self, it felt wrong. I felt like my expectations of myself, as well as social expectations, were at odds with how I felt about the work I did. And I felt like because of that irreconcilable difference, I felt like I couldn't even do my best at the job because I was fragmenting my own ability to be one place or the other. So after having made that decision, though, I started asking myself, why am I deciding this? What's causing me to give up this career, this job for 8 years? And I started doing research, so I began digging. And what I found, and these are my words, is that American schools were designed to and continue to create passive and obedient consumers and to alienate critical thinkers. And then what I have right here is the history of American education. And this information is all online, it's all very public. But starting in 1902, mandatory public education began being funded by the Rockefeller and Carnegie Foundations. And you can see throughout the history of education, and there's more information in this, that actually what we consider public education has actually been funded by these large oligarchs, these large corporations. And then I kept on doing research, and what I found was that in 2010, the United States, I actually found two different facts. In 2010, the United States was either first or second after Switzerland in terms of spending on education. So despite the fact that everyone always says, we don't spend enough on education, the truth is we spend more than every other country, with the possible exception of Switzerland. Despite that, according to the survey, according to the OECD poll, we ranked 17th in literacy, 17th in math, and 21st in science, and that was according to 40 modernized countries. But we're still spending so much money, so where is all this money going? And somebody might say that, well, Common Core, that's going to change things. Common Core is different. So I actually did some research about Common Core, which I almost knew nothing about, and so really it became a buzzword around the school community here and elsewhere.
But wait, did you say we were allowed to speak or we weren't?
You're totally allowed to speak.
Because I want to say, coming from a third world country, the data that you have in terms of our ranking, there's a distinct difference too. In the United States, the law says we have to educate everybody, and the population of kids with special needs and things like that. In other countries, such as mine that I came from, you had to test, and only if the scores deem you to attend school do you get to go to school. So of course there's a controlled population.
And that's such a valid point that I've thought about and talked about. And the truth is, that is so valid, but it doesn't change the actual facts and information that I'm presenting. And that could be something that we could consider eventually, but I think that's secondary to looking at what we do know about our American education system before we speculate about the differences between.
Well, I'm just talking about the amount of funding, because there's a huge population that we have to educate, that we're spending money for, that other countries do not.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about.
That's all I was talking about, why our rankings, we're still testing that population compared to them testing their controlled population. So when we're not really comparing apples to apples, that's all.
Well, that's surely true. We're
that's all.
Comparing different things. But in regards to that, we are comparing, according to this, modernized countries, and none of that actually changes what I'm looking at, which is schools in America. So where's all this money going? And things have changed today. We have the Common Core States Initiative. And I actually have my facts here. Man, I could go on. I told myself that actually this information is all public. And anybody who wants to learn it and know this stuff can do the research and look at it. And somebody who doesn't want to pay attention just won't. And that's a frustrating thing, I think. But the first thing I think that I found to be so hard was that it's called a states initiative. It is the language used makes it seem like it was funded by people with the best interests of children in mind. But my research says that in 2009, the NGA, the National Governors Association, partnered with Achieve Incorporated, a nonprofit that received millions of dollars from the Gates Foundation to design Common Core. And that it was actually designed by testing executives, which put a lot of pieces together, because I know being around this school, we throw around another buzzword, data, as if that data is impartial, but it's been absolutely created by these testing companies as almost a pyramid scheme to justify more testing. And so these testing companies, they're putting the money together, Inspire, Pearson, what's the other one that we use? I'm drawing a blank right now. But these are the companies that are putting the money together. And although it's called a states initiative, the funding was basically a bribe according to the Race to the Top. States had to sign on before the core was actually finished to get funds from the government according to Race to the Top. And this is crazy, only two content specialists helped design the Common Core. And they both now travel the country warning people about the dangers of Common Core. One of these people, reading specialist Dr. Sandra Stotsky, now encourages parents and students to opt out of testing related to Common Core. She says she thought the standards left students with an empty skill set. And that helped me understand. I've always felt like the way we teach reading was such a fragmented approach. It was like teaching somebody to ride a bicycle by telling them to pedal harder on the left leg. And you almost lose the entire focus of what you're actually teaching children. The math specialist, Dr. Milgram, described himself as not signing off on Common Core because it was not internationally benchmarked and there is no research behind it. Now that's a quote. I can't confirm that. It's hard to use an absolute word like no, according to general semantics. But he said that, and he was the one who helped design it. So then, the next question is, what do we really teach? And what we really teach, I think, is the same thing that happened when I came in here, and I was told that we were here for the SLO conference. We are taught power structure, and that is, since you are my supervisor, I do what I'm told. Since children are supervised me, they do what they're told. This one's pretty important. This is the power structure that we teach. And so really, I grade students, you guys grade me, politicians fund administration, and nobody can actually communicate. Because how can I go to a Tuesday morning meeting and speak up to my administrators, my supervisors, and say I disagree, and invite that kind of criticism and pressure upon myself? It's possible for sure, but I mean that is such a limit to actual communication. That's also why I expected people to not want to be filmed. I really admire that you are talking while this is on, because anybody in a position of power doesn't actually want to have a conversation about real information about what's actually going on. And so, if all this is funded from the top down, then I have to ask myself, whose lessons are we teaching? You know, students are being graded by me, I'm being graded by administration, who's being hired by the politicians, who's doing the politicians, who's funding the politics, who's funding the curriculum. I believe I've already answered that. the Rockefeller Corporation, the Carnegie Foundation, and the Gates Foundation. But really, I mean, all these facts aside, what really scares me is the newspeak that comes out. You call something that it's not, and people just keep repeating it until it becomes, quote unquote fact, I guess, or at least you can Google it and find out, oh, that's fact. That's the first hit on Google. So we have these weird like doublespeak words like the state's initiative, and you say, well, what is the state's initiative, and what makes this the state's initiative? And really, what you find is an empty phrase. You have No Child Left Behind, which we all can look back and say, wow, that was, even at the time, we all knew that was like a garbage phrase. Race to the top. And like I said earlier, the phrase data itself suggests some sort of objectivity. But if you look at how that data was constructed, by who, what it's for, it becomes one of the most blatant, misleading uses of like the scientific process that I've ever seen in my life. And I knew that intuitively years ago, but I didn't develop the vocabulary to articulate that until recently. And so, of course, the next question is, what do we do? Are we all going to quit? And I mean, no, we're not all going to quit. But this power structure exists pretty much primarily in our minds. And so for me, even though I'm nervous as all get up, to come up here and speak about this is me trying to get out of this power structure in my head so that I can actually teach children one day. Maybe in a school, maybe not. That's almost irrelevant. But I think any time that people can communicate with each other and talk about things as people, as professionals, as in whose lessons am I teaching, whose lessons are you teaching, whose lessons are you teaching, I think that we start to get out of this old way of thinking and start thinking about what actually is happening around us and what's actually going on. So what comes next? If you really wanted children to learn, take some of the money that's going to these testing companies and actually just put fewer children with adults. Because I think most behavioral problems, I think most academic problems, I think a lot of social problems could be so dramatically reduced and alleviated by just giving children more adult attention. And I put two quotes up here. The problems that exist in the world today cannot be solved by the level of thinking that created them. That's Albert Einstein. And Buckminster Fuller said you can't change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And so that's what I'm saying for my personal life right now. I'm saying that the way I function right now in this system is not helping myself or anybody else. Another thing we need to do, I think, and this is not necessarily the people in this room, but I think a lot of teachers in this building and a lot of people around here really act like we're saving children, like we are helping children. But I don't, in my opinion, we're not helping anybody what we're doing. We are just reinforcing a power structure in people's minds that is unnecessary and outdated. So every time we go and act like a child is bad or a child is wrong, I think we need to look within ourselves and say, wow, like what's in my head that I feel like I need to subjugate other people to feel like I'm doing my job? Because I think that's really where the virus in our thinking lies. And so now my only job is to clear my own head. And I officially resign. Thank you so much.
Well, Mr. Johnzak.
Would you like me to turn this off?
No, you can leave it
Okay,
on,
great.
because I was just gonna say, I just heard you present all the reasons behind why you're resigning, and then you gave us a verbal, but you really have to put that in writing
Okay.
for it to be official.
Okay, one
Okay.
writing report. Did you guys write this down? Because if you wrote this down, then I could.
No,
I
I
thought you were supposed to write down